Ba-da-ba-ba-ba, da-ba-da-da-da-da. All right. We are live, friends. We are live. Pin that comment. It's Nanny Marie. It's Emperor Penguin. It's Vault 428. Woo! Thanks for being here, friends.
How come it doesn't say we're live on my thing?
It usually takes like a good 20 seconds.
My iPad is slower than I am.
You might need to refresh.
Later than I am.
Hello, hello.
Later than I am. Hi, there it is. I see it.
Bing, bang, boom. Great.
Oh, thanks, Nanny Marie. I think of you sometimes when I'm like, what can I do to make myself interesting looking today? And then I'm like, how about black lipstick? Yes.
I do love the dark lip.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you all.
And
I
it's
did a light
great.
eye. You can't see it because I have glasses, but I just wanted to kind of mix it up a little more.
Splendid. All right. Well, welcome everybody. This is Between Two Nerds, brought to you by Nerds Vote, your source for voter registration information, as well as chats with your favorite notable nerds. I'm JP Karliak.
I'm Courtenay Taylor in a dark lip.
In a dark lip. And I'm in a League of Their Own shirt. Because sure. We have an amazing... Can I do this from my laptop? I don't know. I actually do.
No, you cannot tell
No.
me no.
Nope.
No.
Nope. Phone only. Phone only.
Yeah.
But how does he want... I don't know how this works. But yeah. Phone only. Oh, and that guy. Sydney! Hi, pal. Yeah, so while we are waiting for our very special guest to jump on his phone, our action item for the day is below. It is the census. Yes, it is still the census, because how many people have actually filled out the census? What is it, like barely 50%? Oh, Courtney?
I have.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I thought you... But yeah.
No, I don't have a question. I did do it, though, like immediately. And I was definitely one of those people that was like, because I come from maybe less than savory background where I'm always like, I don't, like I'm one of those people that's like, I can't have a personalized license plate because what if I'm doing some shit? And like, I drive away and then somebody will be able to find me and turn me into the cops. So I was not a census person, but now I am. I'm living the clean, good life now. And so I did my census as a step in the right direction.
For those of you filling out the Between Two Nerds bingo cards, that's right, everybody. Courtney brought up her rap sheet.
It wasn't really my rap sheet. It was that I possibly just don't like things that identify me, but I'm learning to get over that being on social media.
Yes, fair enough. All right. So, without further ado, we have an amazing guest today, both on camera and off camera, by which I mean the voiceover. No, there you go.
The voice actor.
There he goes. He was in Love, Death, and Robots. He plays a very sweet, no, not sweet at all, very abusive father on Riverdale. And he is also Liu Kang in the latest. Please welcome friend of the show, Matt Yang King. It's working. Yay! There it is. Co-star.
It's the thing.
It's the thing.
It's the thing and the thing and the other thing.
If I did not know ahead of time that was you, I never would have known that was you.
Oh, thank you.
That was
I
fun.
was so amazed. I had no idea, and I looked you guys up because I loved that episode so much, and then I was like, oh.
Yeah,
man.
It's an amazing short. For those of you that have not seen Love, Death, and Robots on Netflix, please check it out, and do check out. What is the name of your short?
The Witness, or my other one is Good Hunting. So those are my two.
Oh yeah.
And I highly recommend The Witness because it's Alberto Mielgo is the director, and he's the guy who is the storyboard artist and the main animatic designer behind a lot of the big sequences in Into the Spider-Verse.
Oh.
So if you liked the artistic style and the way that Into the Spider-Verse is done, it's exactly that. Yeah.
It is so beautifully done. It is like I think it's my favorite episode, including my own.
Yeah.
It is the one that I go back to the most. I love it.
Yeah. I would have thought it was oh darn it. Who's the guy that was in Rush Hour that's not Chris I thought it was
Chris Tucker?
I totally thought it was Chris Tucker.
That's so funny. Because I've done him and I've done Kevin little Kevin
Hart.
comic.
Kevin Hart.
I've been their voice for the TV version. When it's like we're gonna dub over them so they don't swear.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's just like, you're a dumb face, and like I'll go in and like do Kevin Hart, and it's hilarious that they cast me as Kevin Hart. Because I am the least Kevin Hart of any human being has ever Kevin Harted. I'm not nearly as funny as he is. I don't think I sound like him, but they did. I don't know. So
hey, I've been Bradley Cooper, so what do I know?
You could be Bradley Cooper.
I could be the raccoon version of Bradley Cooper. That's not as far as it goes.
How are you, Courtenay?
I'm good. Excuse me for 1 second because somebody broke out of the room and it's hot breathing over here. I'll be right back.
Oh yeah, Matt, we always have a special guest on this show, and it is the loud snoring of her dog Lulu.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so we always need to cordon her off during the show. But yeah, things are good. How are you doing?
We're good. We're surviving. I mean, I'm doing homeschool with 3 kids, so
God bless.
I now think kindergarten and first grade teachers should be paid $1 million a minute.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah,
it's cuckoo crazy pants, you know, to do that. I think somebody's got to try and push through a school bill to get teachers better funded at the end of this. I think that's a good time to go through that because all the parents are going to be like, yes, they should be paid a lot more.
Yeah. Anybody trying to do the homeschooling right now, they're like, oh this is okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, that's how to. Yeah, and you got to keep 26 kids educated and entertained.
We had a check at my house last week, and I was like, I've never been more secure in my choices in my life.
Yeah. On any day, I am stunned.
And they were like, apparently you can't do that. Not even in the chat.
Mm-mm.
It's not their fault.
No.
It's all woefully just.
Nope. Pay those teachers. Pay them a lot more.
Bless them. Bless them.
Very bad. So, in addition to schooling the youth,
yes,
which is practically full time in and of itself.
Yes.
What have you?
Youths too.
Yeah, he's got 3.
I got 3. Yeah, I had 3. And it's so funny because when you grow up, you never go to somebody and you go, "Oh my God, you have a brother and a sister?" Right? It's not amazing. But if you have 3 kids in modern America, people are all like, 3? And they think you're like Ben Franklin, right? Like you got like a staff,
right?
Like got 16 kids in the wings. But it's a lot.
Though, your kids are super smart, so I feel like they don't really even need you, do they?
Well, that's my job, is to stay out, you know. It's really funny because you know, you do the parenting thing where you just want to get away from them a little bit all day long, and then as soon as they go to sleep, you watch videos and look at photographs of them, which is ridiculous. So like we're watching this video, my wife and I are watching this video of our children, and we're the most obnoxious parents in the entire world. Like, and it's of our first kid. So we're like, are you on the slide? Are you okay? Okay, just come up to the top of the slide. Just come around to the top of the slide. Okay, good. Make sure you put your hands on both sides. Okay, straighten your back. Straighten your back. Okay, that's good. I'm gonna be down to the bottom. I'm gonna brush off the sand to make sure that you're okay. Okay, are you looking at me? Come on? And I was like, oh my God, will you leave your child alone? It was just, we were the worst. So we at least.
And by the 3rd one, it's just like you just throw them in the sandbox.
Oh yeah. No, first one you're trying to figure out whether or not you can keep this thing alive. The second one is like texting while driving. It's like you're bad at 2 things at the same time, and you might kill somebody at any 1 second if you don't pay attention.
Sure.
And the third one is just like, well, they got to learn how to juggle knives at some point. So it's just, yeah.
You're the one that...
How much sand are they eating? It's fiber. It's...
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Keeps you regular.
Yeah. They put the fork in the socket. They're not going to do that again.
It was actually, I know this movie came out 10 years ago because I was on a podcast called Popcorn Mafia, hosted by a friend of the show, Gray Drake.
Okay.
And we reviewed movies together. And the two movies that we talked about were Iron Man, the first one.
Awesome.
So 11 years ago, I guess.
Right.
12. And Babies, the documentary, which followed babies that were, one was in San Francisco, one was in Tokyo, one was in Tibet, and one was in Africa.
Oh, wow.
And just like the coddling of that San Francisco baby versus like the baby in Tibet who got literally kicked in the face by a goat. And they were like, yeah.
And I bet you that baby in Tibet's like way happier.
Yeah, like they barely paid attention. They were just like, "You good?
No,
all right."
No depression issues. It's like I got kicked in the face by a goat when I was 3.
Cheeses and like.
Oh, it's doing baby yoga. They were doing
yoga with the mom and stuff, and they were it was intense.
Baby yoga and the helmet, and not like the helmet where it's like, "Oh God, there's something wrong with you. We need to make sure that you have the helmet." Like the helmet, just like, well, why not?
They're so precious.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that was the thing that made me like, oh, maybe parenting has variances. Like,
relinquish control.
I know. For those of you just joining, welcome to Between Two Nerds. This is a show brought to you by Nerds Vote, a voter registration organization specifically for nerds. Today, our special guest is Matt King. If you have any questions for Matt, feel free to throw them in the little question mark box down the bottom. We will ask him some questions throughout the show.
That's fun. We should let Reddit know that I'm here.
You know, Dear Reddit.
Dear Reddit.
Speaking of Reddit, so in addition to schooling the children, how are you keeping inspired and motivated? You're a guy that always has his fingers in many pies.
Yeah, I have a lot of pies. I saw this coming kind of I was a bit of a doom chaser in January. And so I pivoted pretty quick and sort of built a home studio and did the whole thing to get ahead of it. So I've been working pretty consistently, which is nice. But then May? Yeah, we just had to get the hell out. And so we went out to the wilds of Montana and like sat in the wilds of Montana in a cabin and went to Yellowstone and did those sort of things and really got out into nature and did nothing. So that was very, 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 very good was to get away and drive across the country and like that, although it's a whole new land. You know, you hit Idaho and there's no virus. They think there's no virus there. So I was the lone Asian guy walking down the street with a mask on. And they were like, yeah, no problem. So that was weird. That was a little odd.
Yeah. I mean, I do find that, like, when I call my mom who's in Pennsylvania, you know, I can get real critical of her for being like, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? But, like, there's 7 people in the whole county that have it. So I feel sort of like, you know. Yeah.
I mean, that was the thing in Montana is you realize Montana is, like, a goodly, like, nearing the size of California, but they have the 1 million person population, right? So it's like the population of Burbank in a state the size of California. I mean, ain't nobody rubbing elbows. So It was, you know, when you're out in the wilderness, you're out in the wilderness. It's a different set of needs. It's a different set of what they have to worry about. So, you know, plus we were like worried about bears.
The one thing that I don't think about every day.
Exactly. It was like, yeah.
Burning to the ground, sure. Dying, smoke inhalation, getting a virus, all of that. Bears, not on my mind.
No. And it was lovely, and we got to go out there, and everybody got tested, and we saw family, and we were distant and then together, and it was wonderful. And got to do all of the things out by trees, which was nice.
Very, very cool.
Mm-hmm. Otherwise, to keep inspired, I've been listening to Jim Quick a ton, who does the Quick Brain podcast and has amazing things about sort of training your brain to do various different things. And he did this whole series on flow and on staying in flow and on staying in creative flow. And it was interesting. I've been writing this screenplay for years called Dust of Life. And in the middle of the Montana backwoods at like 2 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and the whole screenplay crystallized. And I had nothing to write it down, couldn't type, couldn't do anything. And so
So he got a piece of slate and a piece of coal.
I Fred Flintstone that thing. Hey, Fred, just watch me do it. Right? And I went in and I plugged my iPhone into the car and turned the car on and just like madly typed. And then fell back asleep in the car and then woke up and madly typed again. But I got the whole screenplay done in the middle of the woods of Montana, which was weird.
I mean, stranger places, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it just goes to show you when you give yourself a little change of scenery.
Yeah. And also relief from the news cycle.
Is KWIK speed learning half the time.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's bright. He's got some really. He basically has these things on how to accelerate your memorization time, how to accelerate your ability to learn things, learn languages, things like that. This became a sort of self-improvement 6 months for me as well. It was just like because I was confined and I was like, I got to figure out how to be mission based, right? It was just like, I got to be like an astronaut on the ISS, just like keep busy. What's my next thing to do?
Sure.
Take care of it. Yeah. I don't know how people are like, I had nothing to do. And so I took up knitting and look at the caftan I made. I have no idea how that's happening because,
Are you saying that you haven't started baking sourdough?
No. Didn't make the sourdough.
I think the entry level is banana bread.
Yeah.
Quick breads are way easier.
I perfected the popover.
Go to Jim Quick, KWIK.
KWIK, yeah, absolutely. Jim Quick is amazing.
His last name, just saying.
Absolutely.
Matt, Phil Lamar is asking, did you plug the show yet?
No, I didn't plug the show. Sorry, Phil. So Phil and I have been working on Goblins Animated, based on the amazing webcomic Goblins Comic, which has been going for 11 years and which is basically Dungeons and Dragons told from the monster's point of view. It's the goblins, the little guys, the monsters, and they're tired of all the high-level paladins coming by and squishing them. And so they decide one day that their lives matter, and they're going to go out into the world, and they're going to become adventurers themselves and go and do it. And so we raised a bag load of cash on Indiegogo, and we've been turning that into a crazy animation, and that has been the hardest, steepest learning curve that I've ever done. Yeah, I mean, all three of us have lent our voices to numerous things. Mm-hmm. And just stepping to the other side of that line, I mean, Phil and I have on a number of occasions just wanted to bang our foreheads flat on things, because there are all the things that you just don't consider when you've done live action and you've done animation. I mean, I've made a bunch of live action movies. I've directed a bunch of them. I've produced a bunch of them. Like, making animation is so much harder. It's ridiculous. You just take things you take for granted, like gravity. Right?
Oh yeah.
You just don't think about it, right?
The way that joints work.
The way I have a 2.5 foot creature, and we have these amazing goblins with these incredible sort of emotional lives, and we're trying to build these things, but it's like, okay, the goblin jumps up in the air. Well, how heavy is he? And if they jump up in the air instantaneously, if it's wrong, but you don't know how to get it right. And it's so intensely, it's really, really difficult. Yeah. I mean, making animation is the hardest thing I've ever done. It's super, super duper crazy, but we're almost done. We have done every single step. We're about to move into music. And then we will have an animation to release to our fans. So in the midst of this, we were also pumping out T-shirts and all sorts of other stuff and like that. So,
I mean, we know nothing about merchandise.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You guys are hip deep in merch, right?
We love our merch.
Where's my tank top?
I learned so much.
Which, by the way, for anybody out there that would like a Nerds Vote t-shirt, we are selling them now at nerdsvote.com. Also enamel pins and buttons and stickers.
Yes.
It's actually nerdsvote.com/shop.
Well, but, you know, if they happen to bypass the button that says register to vote along the way, so be it.
Exactly.
Oh, that's right. That's what the site is. It's for registering stuff. But also, we have cute stuff. So.
You got knockoff, Vault 428, you got knockoffs of our brand? Who is knocking us off?
It's like NERDZ, right? It's like Nerds Vote.
Nerds Vet.
Stop it, Shelby.
The Russians.
NERDTH vote. Nerds Vote.
So, speaking of the voting aspect of Nerds Vote, so we have an election coming up, in case you didn't know.
Yeah, I've been doing these things, the little postcards. I've been writing my addresses and helping people out in the world vote.
Nice.
So I highly recommend doing that. Going, getting some scribbling out and print them out and help some people find their way to the polls.
Yeah. Doing it over here as well.
Absolutely that. We love the postcards.
Yeah. Write a letter.
Poll workers. Gonna be a poll worker. There's all kinds of stuff going down. So many ways to help out.
We're going to be doing this show live from the polling place. I don't know if they'll allow that, but we're going to try.
Can you do that? Well, you can do it from 200 yards, right? Don't you have to be like 200 yards from it? Otherwise, it's considered...
Yeah, I think there will be a number of laws broken, but Courtenay has pledged to do her poll working as dressed in one of those like.
Do we prosecute breaking election laws anymore? I thought we were done with prosecuting breaking election laws.
I mean, whatever.
I'm just gonna ignore it.
Yeah, at this point, it's the Wild West. Matt, do you have a memorable voting experience, or do you remember the first time you voted?
Yeah, actually, I love, and it kind of ticks me off the way California does their voting, right? Because you do the little dots, you do the dots with the marker. Oh yeah. And I grew up in the Northeast, and the way we did it was I would go into the booth, and you'd pull the giant lever. And they actually would let the little kid, because, you know, you were little, go in there with my mom. And I remember going there with my mom, and I'd walk in there, and you'd pull the giant lever, and the curtain would go shoof behind you. And then you'd have all these little levers to click, and you had to, like, click the 20, and then you'd pull it back, and they'd reset.
Right.
And I thought that was I always wanted to do that, purely to be in the booth with the levers.
Yep.
And then I got to do that, and then I came to California, and I did the thing, and I always thought that was not nearly as good. Yeah.
I have infamously described my experience with the levers on this show because my dad would take me into the curtain thing, and he would pick me up and let me press the levers.
Oh, see?
Now, actually, you know, I just realized something.
That's illegal, but
I will say, now granted, I was like 4 or 5. I was the age where one could pick me up. But I will say, because the lever, like, you can pull it down, but you can change your mind. Like, until you pull the big lever back, the little switches are, you know, you can figure it out.
Yeah.
So I don't know. My dad may have let me, like, play around with it and then put me down and then made decisions and then.
Exactly.
So he might not have been as irresponsible as I originally thought.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have to share that with my therapist this week.
Your mom's like, no, sweetie.
No, your father had no idea.
Tick, 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 tick.
Yeah. So one of our the big questions that we ask our guests, Matt, is who are you voting for? And when we ask that, we don't mean party or candidates.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we kind of do, but we're not really. No, but what we're actually asking is when you are flicking the levers or marking the markers, what people or issues or persons do you have in mind that you want that ballot to benefit?
I'm almost a single issue voter. And it's really it all comes down to my deep environmentalism. when I mean, and you know, this hits home as well because my uncle passed away because of coronavirus in the midst of all of this, which sucked a lot.
Yes.
Because you know, he took me in when I was at NYU, and you know, I literally end up by happenstance being homeless in New York City for a day or two, because I was supposed to move in with a guy and he got into a huge car accident, so I couldn't, and so I had nowhere to go, and so I lived in the frat house for a day, and literally my uncle took me in at that time period and gave me this beautiful apartment and stuff like that, and I ended up living in his apartment building and became very close to my cousin and him over the next 8 years, and it was just, it sucked because we had to say goodbye to him over the phone and stuff like that. So you know, coronavirus mishandling aside, you know, really for me, I'm a huge environmentalist, and you know, when I was 9 years old, my grandmother passed away because of cancer, and my mom, who's a 40-year-old Asian woman at the time, decides to shoulder this huge burden. She's going to take on cancer. She's going to stop being a microbiologist, and she's going to go away to medical school at age 40 in America, right? And that ain't happening, right? Because racism, frankly, right? Because woman and because racism. And she's like, screw you, it's not going to stop me. And she goes and does it. But the thing is, mom was overseas. And so we had to, you know, because she basically said, you're not going to stop me. She decided to go overseas and then come back in through the American system, because you weren't going to stop her from beating this disease. It was amazing. So I was 13, I got to, she came in through St. Vincent's, and we came in on the first plane into Grenada after the invasion of Grenada. And we lived on the island for a few weeks, and I got to snorkel for the first time and see my mom. So it was this very rosy atmosphere, and I got to see the reefs of St. Vincent's and become this avid little snorkel kid who was, you know, on my face for 9 hours a day. And that was such an inceptive experience of experiencing what nature is like.
Yeah.
And over the years, I've become a scuba diver, and I've gone back out and I've seen the reefs, and you can see the degradation. You can just see the damage that we're doing at such a granular level that I don't think there's a bigger issue that's going to affect more people. I mean, you look at the wildfires that are happening up north right now, you look at the Amazon, where, you know, I feel like in a certain way, like coronavirus is the earth going, get off, just like, get off me, you know?
Get rid of the fleas.
Exactly, right. Like the earth is walking to an office and there's a doctor going, I'm sorry, you have stage 4 humans. There's not a lot we can do. But, you know, so for me, I feel that issue is going to drive so many other things. It's going to drive mass immigration. It's going to drive many of our policy and economic issues, as we can see, as more and more people come onto a planet that has less and less resources, and we don't find a way to make it sustainable. We're just going to come into every single problem that we're in right now. And I happen to have a very, very, very wise father who's been talking to me for years about the problems of overpopulation and what that'll anthropologically do to different situations. So for me, if you're mishandling the environment, if you are going out and you are basically saying, well, let's do it the cheapest, most damaging way possible, and not thinking forward, not thinking things like the Green New Deal, not thinking like clean power, clean energy, then really you lost my vote. So for me, it's really, really, really imperative that we start looking forward as to what the next century's solutions are. Because with 7 billion people on the planet, we just cannot consistently make the same mistakes that we've made before, right? Like we used to be, we'd make a big mistake and we allow the pendulum to swing back, and then we don't make the same mistake again. And so the pendulum swings, you know, both ways, and we kind of go, okay, we made a mistake and now they're making a mistake, and now we'll make a mistake, and we'll get it right somewhere in between as the pendulum passes. with 7 billion people on the planet, we don't have the room to screw up that much anymore, right? We just do so much damage. I mean, it was somebody had said to me, if you think about it, the first toothbrush you ever had, right, in your life, your 5-year-old toothbrush, is still somewhere on this planet, right?
Yeah.
It's still somewhere on this planet right now. It has not gone away, right? And if you think about it, every piece of trash that you ever created after that is still here, and we're not dealing with it. And frankly, if we're following our kindergarten rules, it's time to pick up, and it's time to share, and it's time to figure out how to take care of the thing that we've been given. So at the end of the day, that's my single issue. It sort of trickles into a lot of other issues, but that's my single issue.
Oh, for sure. I mean, because environmental issues trickle into racial justice and poverty issues and housing and
100%.
many other things.
100%. You cannot, you look at the most populated areas in the world that have been populated by humans for the longest, and those are the areas of the most strife. It's not surprising. It's not surprising. You go, okay, the most people have existed in this area coming out of the Middle East for the longest period of time, and this is where we laid down the most original cities. Isn't it strange that those places where we've consumed most of those resources are the places with the highest amount of strife? No, not at all. That's not surprising in the slightest.
Cheery.
Right, absolutely.
So,
Watch Love, Death, and Robots. Go watch World of Teens.
Sort of piggybacking on that, then, what sorts of things are you, this is one of my favorite questions, is always like, what sorts of nonprofits and action groups do you support, and where can you suggest that people who are feeling the same as you can put their efforts aside from voting?
I would say less. I mean, I love Environmental Action Group. The WWF, just because it's the World Wildlife Fund and it's called the WWF.
Right.
And why they don't have a T-shirt of a panda just like throwing an elbow, I don't know.
Yeah,
but that's a miss on their part. It's a complete miss. But so there's many environmental groups that you get to do. But my biggest thing is that I would say Google it, because I'm gonna botch any URL I try to give out. There is a great website that basically lists how nonprofits spend their money, right?
CharityNavigator.org.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
Brilliant. And it is really, really, if you worry about how much something costs and you were spending money on it, right, then be aware of how you're spending money on the things you want to make a difference on, right? And I get a lot of, I'm sure you guys too, get like 40 emails a day that I'm deleting for people asking me for money, right? And one of those things is, I think it's caveat emptor. You have to let the buyer beware. You have to know what you're spending your money on. Am I spending my money on advertisement? Am I spending my money on just buying people who are part of this organization so that the organization exists? Or am I spending my money on action on the ground? And to me, the most imperative thing is to go out and find organizations that have 65% or above action on the ground. And so that would be my one thing. Whatever tickles your fancy, whatever needs you need addressed, because with 7 billion people on the planet, there are a lot of needs that need to be addressed. Go out and make sure that it's action on the ground, not just making something exist.
Yeah.
For those of you who aren't aware of charitynavigator.org, it's an amazing way that you can both find out more about the charities that you're interested in. They rate charities on their transparency and accountability, how their financials are broken down into what percentage of every dollar is spent on actually doing the work versus, asking for money. They don't rank every single one. That you do have to have a certain size to be ranked by it. But the beautiful thing is as well that you can go on it and you can donate, and you can donate anonymously. Because one of the things that drives me crazy is that I will donate and then I will get 15,000, calendars and coffee cups and T-shirts, and I don't want any of that stuff. So it's been really great to be able to give my money and give all of that money and know that it's not going to come back to me in the form of stamps and things like that.
Exactly.
They really are amazing. They tell you how much the CEO of the company makes and stuff. So whatever is your thing that you find important, they're going to have stuff on there that will help you make great choices with where your money goes.
Yeah. Hi from Brazil.
Yeah.
If you guys have questions for Matt, I mean, like
throw them in the question mark box.
We know everything about this guy. I want
to know why. To what do you attribute all things steampunk coming to you, Matt?
Well, that was because in 2009, I sort of went, and I had loved Jules Verne and China Mieville and all of the various authors before then. But in 2009, I went to Comic-Con and I saw just the huge collection of punks that were there. And I realized that it was becoming a design aesthetic rather than a producer of IP. And so I didn't understand how you could have Charlotte Bronte and Jane Austen and all these amazingly powerful female writers over here. And then over here you have just cheesecake. And I was like, wait a second, like, how is that? How do you have feminine empowerment over here and these incredible, like Mary Shelley, you know, like being, you know, getting Percy Shelley out of a marriage and doing all these things and being 18 years old and creating Frankenstein and doing all these different things. How do you do that? And then over here, we just have steampunk Iron Man again, right? So I felt like I was looking around for it and going, okay, who's creating IP in this world? Who's creating IP in this world? Who's creating IP in this world? Because I love these stories, but I wanna see the stuff. I want to just not watch The Invisible Man and Frankenstein and Dracula again. I would really like to have some new stories. I don't need to see Emma again. I'd really like to have some new stories. And so when I didn't see it for a year, I went, I'm going to go do it, and went and raised a bunch of money, and that turned into a relationship with the Hensons, and then we started creating a show together, and we raised a bunch more money, and then we created a pilot, and then it went back and forth, and then Steampunked caught wind of it on the Game Show Network, and I ended up being a judge on a reality show.
That show was fun.
Oh yeah, it was really cute. There was a lot of infighting. The funny thing was people aren't really like that, are they? And then you go, have you ever been to a steampunk convention? Because they're exactly like that.
I always loved the way that Felicia Day portrayed the steampunkers on the Guild, how they were just like the hipsters of nerdery.
Oh yeah, absolutely the hipsters of nerdery. Because they're the book nerds, right? And they're the book nerds from like 8 to 65. So it's the 8-year-olds who like to talk to 65-year-olds. And, you know, it's just like,
right.
You're just, well, really? Is that what they were really saying? You know, it's like they don't just write fanfic that's 5 pages. They write fanfic that's like a book.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yes, volumes.
Yeah, desperately profound, because they do things that are much more difficult than you could ever imagine. But to me, it's still, frankly, the last vestige of geekdom that is untouched, and we haven't had the show yet, you know, except the show I'm creating, that really taps into it. It's interesting. I'm doing something called the Cabinet of Curiosities with my father, actually. And we're creating a motion comic within the world, and we have the first one coming out called The Secret Language of Flowers, and we're gonna have all this pretty art, and we got a great artist.
I love that script. Love that script.
Yeah, so it's really solid. And then Steam, which went through the Henson grinder, and then they ended up dropping it and giving it back to me at the beginning of this year. Steam ended up at the end of it, which is really fantastic, going from being about a young boy who's a lordling and sort of trying to find the father that got killed, to the 2 main characters, because of Me Too, are now 2 women, and they're based on 2 real women. One who was this woman who created what these things that are called nutshell studies, right? She was disallowed from studying to be a CSI. She really wanted to be a CSI in about 1856, right? And she was disallowed from being a CSI, but she was very wealthy. And so what she did was she created these Victorian houses that were Victorian doll houses of murder scenes.
Sure. Like you
And
do.
she would recreate them like down to, and she would try to then solve it through what she had done. And her work actually is still in the FBI. Her nutshell studies are still there.
Is the show about her called Murder, She Built?
Murder She Built. Yes.
Courtney hates me right now.
Yes. I was so well done. But yeah, she's one of the characters, and the other character is basically sort of partially based on Georges Sand, who was, you know, bisexual and a lesbian, and trying to pretend to be a man in the midst of a man's world, and trying to make their way. And so it's these two together trying to find out how one of their fathers got killed and why, and what the whole mystery of it is, in a very strange and steampunky way.
Yeah.
That's gonna be fun.
Stuff you come up with, Mr. King. It's so good.
It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be really fun. Yeah.
So, in all of the investigation that you have done into steampunkery and also the 19th century,
yes,
is there anything about elections?
Oh yeah, all the time.
That sticks out to you as like a fun factoid?
Well, the fun thing, I gave myself I basically decided to read one biography of each president, right? Just to go through, and when you do that, you realize the sort of bicycle of the United States, and you watch it become a Prius, right? So you have less of a, because you look at the engine of a Prius and you're like, I have no idea what goes where, right? Like, I don't know what is doing what at all. But a bike, you can kind of go, oh yeah, that gear goes there, and that's why you did that, and that makes sense, right? And the funny thing is, if you look at the 19th century, that's where the wheels on the bus really start to come off, right? Because there's the thing that you see in the presidency of Andrew Jackson and Polk and like that as you go forward, right? Like, Polk is the only president ever to give up a second term. Why? Because he's the only president to get through every single thing on his docket that he said he was going to do. He did it all. He did it in his first presidency, and then he stepped down.
That seems shocking. Did he hold Congress hostage?
No, he was just like, no, this is what it did. He won. I mean, but, you know, then also slave owner, you know, did all these things, started the Mexican-American War and all these other things. So one of the things is that you see in the 19th century, this connectivity between the way we should behave, right? And there's a sense of class, and there's a sense of what a Harvard man is, how people should behave, how people should go into office, and the ethics and morals that a human being should portray, right?
Sure.
And the thing is that also leads to a lot of things like racism. That leads to a lot of things like the idea that certain human beings, because they come from different areas of the world, are simply raised better, and
therefore others are less than.
Where other than less than, right? Exactly. Because we conquered you, we're definitely better. And the thing is that you know, you look at the early 20th century, and you look at surgical bacteriology and the experiments that were carried on Black people there, where basically insanity was caused by bacteria in the body. And if we could remove the bacteria from these poor souls' bodies, then one, maybe they would stop being insane, and two, maybe they would stop being Black, right? I mean, just literally just cuckoo crazy puff eugenic nonsense. And the thing is, when you look at it, you go, oh, there's this aspirational quality to it, right? We want to believe in education. We want to believe in an educated man, usually. We want to believe in an educated man, frankly, right? And we want to believe in the lesser part of society is the lesser part of society. Now, the thing is, we've come to a more egalitarian belief that genius and like that can come from anywhere. But we've also, in doing that, given up this idea that, yeah, or we found rather the idea that my facts are equal to your opinion, or my opinion is equal to your facts, right?
Right.
Where intelligence and thought no longer hold sway as much as they did then, right? Where honor isn't a thing that you hold in office, right? And so there's this interesting thing where I read these biographies and I go, oh my God, these are men of honor who would never let what's happening now happen, right? They would not have let one iota of what has happened over the last four years happen, right? Remember when Howard Dean yelled too loud in a political convention, and that was what made it, you couldn't, well, he can't be president, obviously.
Yeah. Dan Quayle misspelled potato. Screwed.
Exactly, yeah. Remember when Dan Quayle spelled potato wrong? And, well, that guy's never going to be president. Yeah, so we've lost this idea that you need to have a certain aspirational quality to be president. And that's something when I read these books and I go, oh my God, I wish we still had that aspirational quality. But what's interesting about it is that there's always somebody who's bearing the brunt of the awfulness, right? And in these books where they're talking about the aspirational quality, they're completely ignoring and writing out of history all of the people, specifically blacks, who are bearing the brunt of the inane awfulness that has been being done to them, and the fact that they're building the country on their backs. Yeah. And it's interesting now because we're at a crux point where people are realizing we cannot trust the good people in government to do it for us.
Yeah.
Right? John, I mean, I'm interested to see at the end of this process if Jon Stewart was right. Because he said, I'm going to totally paraphrase him.
He was.
Yes. Oh, look, American Blonde said, make honor hip again. That's it. Yes. Yes. Make honor hip again. Absolutely make honor hip again. Right? So, I mean, wouldn't it be nice if people did what they said they were going to do?
Well, the one thing
I'm going to put it on a red top hat.
Yeah.
I will say, I mean, I absolutely, I mean, I totally agree with the aspirational quality, but I will say that the one thing that I think that the election of our current president did, that a good thing that came out of it was that it encouraged people across the nation who never would have considered running for office that now is your time.
Yeah, totally I gotta go for it because I can't trust anybody else to do it for me. I gotta go make a difference. Yeah.
So I think there's something there's somewhere about like the godlike prestige or something like that, like almost like of public office that people are like, oh, I don't know if I could ever do that, but while at the same time bringing back the sense of honor, like honor in its truest sense, and truth. But
I don't even think it's that. I think we've spent so many years
with George W. Bush when people were saying, there became this shift where people were like, I want to vote for that guy because I want to have a beer with him. He's like me. He talks like me. I mean, he's not like you, but he was a wealthy kid from Connecticut who moved to Texas and adopted an accent, but he played that to his favor, and there became this movement of like that the office of the presidency sort of got dumbed down or made more accessible or however you feel about it. And then simultaneously there was a big push from the women's movement to start getting more women in office, and then it kind of all converged together for good and for not so good sometimes. But
don't forget that everybody thought Abraham Lincoln was full speed.
A lot of people are like, anybody can run now. So and also the Tea Party came through and put a bunch of people forward that were not qualified in the sense that we had thought prior to that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see how it has both harmed offices and also elevated the common man or woman to be part of the, part of the process.
Well, the interesting thing that we will see at the end of this is if Donald Trump has come in to stress test the American governmental system, and if at the end of this he can be voted out and we can restore the things that are there, and we have seen that there were checks and balances to his power to a certain extent. If those checks and balances have proven to be strong enough to withstand a level of stress testing that he's put on the American democracy, then frankly, he will actually have made America great again, right? Because that level of stress testing.
Don't tell her that.
No, I'm not saying that it's I'm not saying that it's he who has done that, but that will prove that the American experiment is actually something that's quite successful, right? Because all of the checks and balances that are in place, the three heads of government, the rest of it, is specifically what is supposed to be there. Those checks and balances are there for when you end up with a case like this, right? And he is 100% a stress test of the American democracy.
Well, I think if anything, it is showing, because we have a number of different checks and balances between the three different branches of government, as well as the American public in their ability to vote.
Yeah.
And I think, if anything, I think we've seen several of the checks and balances that were put in place, like the ability to subpoena and hold people accountable and to impeach and all of that. There's certain things that are like, oh yeah, I don't know if these work.
Yeah.
Like it really boils down to if the American public doesn't do it, it's really hard to make it it's really hard to make it happen.
And we've made it harder for the American public to do it.
Social contract, the constructs that are put into place where there are things that are not only illegal, but that are just not done. And it goes back to what you're talking about back in the day, Matt, that will it not only just be on a governmental level but how do you put back these social constructs that may have been completely frayed away?
Yeah, 100%.
And that's where to me, that's where we step in with our votes. Because those are things that are less tangible.
But it's also that we need to make a difference in terms of, frankly, how politics is talked about in America, right? Because right now it's spoken of like a terrorist event with two teams and commentators, right? It's like commentators like at a sports, on Sports Center, talking about a bombing, right? And it's like, because everybody on one side is not only awful, are not only wrong, they're the worst human beings imaginable, right? And on the and frankly, what it does is it makes people, no matter who you are on either side, it makes the people that we want to have in government not want to be in government, right? I mean, can you imagine if we had Delta Airlines running advertisements about American Airlines saying, "Don't fly American, their planes crash," right? Right? We can't. There's a certain line that they won't cross because they understand that it would be bad for the industry in general. And at a certain point, somebody realized that if we continue this negative practice between these candidates, I get to keep my job longer, because nobody wants to come in and be a young 25-year-old challenging me who's held my job for 40 years. So the more gross and yucky I make politics look in general, the more I make it look like a quagmire that doesn't change, the more young people who have the energy to actually come in and change it don't try and take it. And that's one of the things I felt like we really need to address, the ability to speak about politics as not an onerous thing. I mean, don't forget, the founding fathers of this country were not marble statues who were 65 years old. They were a bunch of 20 and 30-year-olds, right? Yeah. AOC was old compared to Hamilton, right? AOC is a maid compared to Hamilton. Hamilton was like what, 5-6 years younger than she is now when he wrote the Bill of Rights. I mean, come on, right? When he wrote, excuse me, the Federalist Papers. When he wrote the Federalist Papers, I mean, it's like,
I was going to say, we've seen the musical.
right? Yeah, it's like crazy. I mean, really, these guys were young. I mean, Ben, what was Washington was like 38. I mean, come on.
Court, what were you going to say?
What we started Nerds Vote about really was because we wanted to have people get more involved. I mean, we joked about like making voting like sexier or like more appealing because
100%.
they want to throw their hands up, and it starts with your entry level is educating yourself about how you're going to vote and voting in every election every time.
Yeah.
Right? So then things become more approachable and you learn things on a local level. And then watching these people who are younger and younger starting to win, starting to get into office and actually doing things, then hopefully it will get more approachable. But it really does start with you and learning about, maybe you're super into the presidential election, but a lot of people I think can take locally and say, look, these things are going to help, where my tax dollars go, the roads that I drive on, the schools that my kids go to, or that are in my neighborhood that, make the neighborhood nicer or whatever.
Right.
And it's really important, I think, for people to start looking at that and saying, like, this is not, politics are not about us, inserting a name and walking away.
Right.
We have to help steer this country. And every single one of us, no matter how old you are, and even if you're not old enough to vote, you're still old enough to call your representatives.
Yeah.
And say, I will be voting as soon as I'm old enough, which is, a year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever. You can still write letters. You can still be involved in the process. And that's what we all have to do. Because
absolutely,
we're seeing what's happened is when we kind of set it and forget it. And
yep.
That's not
no, I mean, when you get 4,000 different judges and you don't know who any of the judges are, I always feel like it's trying to look at a set of medicines on at a doctor's office. Like, what does acyclovir do? Like is this good for you? What are the side effects? Right? And I feel like that every time I look at the judges, I'm always looking at them going, like, is this guy a good guy? Like, what are the side effects? Like, where do they go to school? I mean, because they're about to vote a whole bunch of people to either go to jail or not. So are they fair? I have nothing.
Yep. Huh? And that's why we throw ballot parties, which we'll be talking about. This Thursday is National Voter Registration Day, but starting next week, we will be talking about ballot parties where you get together with friends, probably on Zoom, and divide up these ballots and do the individual research, specifically with our partner ballotready.org, which is an amazing compilation aggregator of non-biased information about every candidate, including those judges and comptrollers and city council people and sheriffs.
You love that word.
I love comptroller because nobody knows what it means.
Comptrollers.
Anyway,
that silent P thing.
We have 2 minutes left, so we've got to let you go, Matt. But before we go, the way that we ask a voiceover person to sign off is with your favorite character. Tell our audience to get out and vote.
Oh, my favorite character. I don't know. I like them all.
Whatever one you think is going to get the kids excited.
Let's do Illidan from World of Warcraft. All right.
Hoping for Kevin Hart.
Go vote! Yeah, it's like, go vote! Damn! All right. Illidan. All right, children. It is your time to head into the world and vote.
Yes! Matt King, everybody. Sir, where can people find you aside from Instagram?
You can find me at madyanking.com. You can find me on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, Matt Yanking as well on Twitter. Awesome. I exist on all social media platforms, but you can check me all out as well on theworldofsteam.com and gobblinsanimated.com, both coming out very soon.
Sweet! And Courtney, we have another Matt as our guest on Thursday. Who is it?
You know what? It's some guy I've never heard of. Matthew Mercer?
Oh, well then. Well then.
I don't know.
So everybody
Well,
tune in for Matt Mercer on Thursday, and we are out in 5 seconds. Thank you, Matt. It was so good seeing you. See you on Thursday.